In 1990, a 37-year-old KGB lieutenant colonel quietly retired from Soviet foreign intelligence. Nobody outside a small circle had ever heard his name. 9 years later, he controlled Russia's nuclear codes. Vladimir Putin spent 15 years as a KGB officer, much of it stationed in East Germany, working in obscurity as the Soviet Union crumbled around him. When he left the service, he was not a general, not a public figure, just a mid-level intelligence officer with no political base and no name recognition at all. He moved back to Leningrad, soon to be renamed St. Petersburg, and took a quiet administrative job at his old university. Then something changed. He became an advisor to Anatoly Sobchak, the city's first democratically elected mayor, and quickly built a reputation as the man who actually got things done. By 1994, he was first deputy mayor, trusted with the kind of responsibility most officials wait decades for. When Sobchak lost re-election in 1996 and later fled the country amid corruption allegations, Putin made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He moved to Moscow. What followed was one of the fastest political climbs in modern history. Kremlin, post after Kremlin post, each one more powerful than the last. By 1998, he was made director of the FSB, the KGB's direct successor. He was, by his own admission, still a virtual unknown to the Russian public, polling at just 2 to 3%. Then, in August 1999, Boris Yeltsin, ailing, unpopular, and increasingly reliant on alcohol, named Putin his fifth prime minister in less than 2 years. 2 days earlier, Chechen-backed rebels had launched an armed raid into southern Russia. Putin's hardline response to the conflict transformed him almost overnight from an anonymous bureaucrat into the most popular politician in the country. Russians, exhausted by years of chaos and broken promises, finally had a leader who looked like he was in control. Think about that. A man virtually nobody could name in August was on track to run the country by winter. On December 31, 1999, Yeltsin stunned the nation and resigned live on television, naming Putin acting president on the spot. 3 months later, Putin won the election outright with 53% of the vote. In under 6 years, he had gone from an obscure, retired intelligence officer to the president of the largest country on earth. But winning the presidency was only the beginning. Russia, in the late 1990s, was controlled almost as much by a handful of billionaires as it was by the Kremlin itself. Men who had bought up the country's oil, gas, and media empires for pennies during the chaotic privatization of the Soviet collapse. If Putin wanted real power, he needed to deal with them first. So in 2000, he made them an offer, an unwritten deal. Stay out of politics and you keep your fortunes. Not everyone took it. Vladimir Gusinsky and Boris Berezovsky both owned major television networks that ran hostile coverage of the Kremlin. Their companies were seized. Both men were forced into exile. Then came the one that mattered most. Mikhail Khodorkovsky was the richest man in Russia, head of the oil giant Yukos, and an outspoken critic of Putin who had started funding opposition political parties. In October 2003, masked special forces stormed his private jet during a refueling stop on a Siberian runway and arrested him at gunpoint. He was charged with fraud and tax evasion. He would spend the next 10 years in prison. His company was dismantled and handed over to Igor Sechin, a former KGB officer and one of Putin's closest, longest-serving allies. Every oligarch in Russia understood the message instantly. Loyalty to the Kremlin was no longer optional. Power in Russia would now flow in one direction only, downward from Putin himself. With the oligarchs neutralized, Putin turned to the rest of the state. He ended the direct election of regional governors, tightening Kremlin control over every corner of the country. Independent television networks were brought under state control one by one. By the end of the decade, nearly all major Russian media answered, directly or indirectly, to the Kremlin. Term limits, on paper, should have ended his rule in 2008. Instead, he simply swapped seats with a loyal ally, serving as prime minister for 4 years while remaining the country's true center of power, before returning to the presidency in 2012. The Constitution was amended again and again. In 2020, a further change reset his term count entirely, clearing a legal path for him to remain in power until 2036. He is now the longest-serving leader in the Kremlin since Joseph Stalin. The quiet, unremarkable intelligence officer who once worked in the shadows of a collapsing empire now personally commands the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, presides over a media landscape almost entirely under his control, and answers to no oligarch, no governor, and no meaningful political opposition left standing. What does it say about a system when total obscurity can become total permanent power in less than a decade? Drop your take below.